Would you like to get updated with the latest episode of AnimeKouhai Tensura spoiler series? It's episode number 285, Volume 13, Chapter 2, Part 10, entitled, The Magitank Force and the Flying Combat Corps Suffer a Total Defeat. Support the channel and you will have access to 3 episodes per week. Check out her Patreon page if you get a chance.
What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
I have an inkling that Yuki and Gadra knew each other and had a cooperative relationship, so it was a good decision to bring Gadra into the fold, since he would serve as a good link to Yuki. I believed that I could trust Gadra due to the simple fact that he doesn't blindly follow Yuki. Later on, I let Gadra meet Adalman. They spent the rest of the time reminiscing about the old days, and it was clear that they missed each other. Adalman agreed to take Gadra in, so I left him in his care for the time being. But before that, after obtaining all the information I could from old Gadra, I ordered him to return to the Empire to carry out my plan. The first order of business was to promote an anti-war stance.
So, are you okay with that?
Leave it to me. I'm used to acting behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, I could have guessed as much. Though, normally it would be impossible for just one individual to stop something that the nation had decided to do. It wasn't as though I didn't believe in Gadra, but it'd be smarter to come up with a plan B, too.
What I want the most is to stop the war,
I admitted.
But from what you've told me, that is looking very difficult. The Empire is a hegemonic power, right? If so, it will stop at nothing once it has been set in motion.
But
that's why I want to lure them into the labyrinth, when that happens.
What do you mean by that? Oh, I understand now. Your Majesty wants to weaken the military power of the Empire and reduce their will to fight.
Yup. Yuki will most likely take advantage of this situation and stir up a mess in their homeland. The Empire won't possibly be able to continue fighting after that.
I wasn't sure if it would go as smoothly as I had just described, but it was true that there wouldn't be any damage if the battle took place inside the labyrinth. Once I made this clear to Gadra, I gave him 3 resurrection bracelets and made in labyrinth equipment. We planned to use these as bait to entice people to enter the labyrinth. In military terms, getting attacked from the rear was truly nasty. It was hard to imagine them ignoring the labyrinth and marching towards the west, but if they had any incentive to seek out the treasures of the labyrinth.
Oh, I see. That is brilliant, Your Majesty. I'm familiar with a certain greedy commander, so Your Majesty's plan will certainly come to fruition.
Gadra confidently replied. If possible, stop the war, if not, then lure them into the labyrinth. Everything depended on Gadra's skills. Asylum for the 4 of them was granted at my discretion, and just like that, I had made some unexpected friends and brought an end to this small ruckus.
Volume 12, Chapter 4, The Empire Strikes First, Part 1.
There lurked a man of many mysteries within the Empire. This man was Tatsuya Kondo, an otherworlder, and he knew every secret among its inner workings. He, indeed, was the darkness of the imperial capital. His short black hair, with bangs gently flowing into his eyes, softened his otherwise tensive demeanor. At first glance, he looked like a fine young man, someone in his early 20s. Beneath it all, however, his heart was cold. The eyes on his emotionless face glowed with a sharp light, as if piercing his enemies and seeing through all. That was to be expected. Tatsuya Kondo, or First Lieutenant Kondo, didn't look his age. Here in the imperial capital, otherworlders weren't so rare. This was because the Empire had a policy of protecting otherworlders and gathered them in its capital from all over the world. This policy was what saved Tatsuya and so many others. This world had magic, and that was the reason why he had been saved. Over 70 years ago, Tatsuya put his life on the line for his country as he engaged in a suicide attack against the enemy's naval strike fleet. He wasn't one to argue the merits of that operation. Reflecting back on the situation, he had believed that it was the only way forward. When he thought about his comrades who valiantly sacrificed their lives, he wished he could find meaning in what they did. This was the reason why Tatsuya would go on to always remember them. In order to let his comrades live within him, to never forget his memories of them, he stayed as a first lieutenant, which was his rank at that time. He was racing towards his death as it came time for him to launch his suicide attack. But when he was engulfed in the blinding light and heat of the explosion, he somehow found himself in another world. He lived despite staring death straight in the eye. The Emperor himself was the one who saved him. Fortune had smiled upon him that day. Tatsuya appeared in a garden that only the Emperor and a few close associates could enter, and as it happened, the Emperor was relaxing there.
Interesting. This must be a twist of fate.
Those were the last words Tatsuya heard before his consciousness faded. When he awoke, he realized that his body was devoid of any blemishes or scratches from before. Tetsuya's luck had saved his life. So, in order to return the favor, he pledged the life he had once wasted to the Emperor. The power he awakened from crossing worlds and facing death, Tetsuya dedicated it all to him. And to this day, that was the only thing he lived for. He never stepped into the spotlight. He didn't grow old. In fact, he still looked exactly the same as the day he'd arrived. He resided in the darkness of the Empire, in other words, the intelligence headquarters, which lurked in the shadows of the imperial capital. The specter that fed on information. The man who lurked in the shadow of the Empire. The man who was accompanied by fiends. A man of many names, that was First Lieutenant Kandu. He was the head of the Imperial Intelligence Agency. None of the corps commanders dared to make light of his existence, as they had never actually seen who he really was. Gadra had sent Shinji and his team to conquer the dungeon, and of course, the Imperial Intelligence Agency was well informed of this information. First Lieutenant Kandu was a taciturn man. "Ah, thank you," had been his brief remark and nothing more. The informants, accustomed to this, bowed and promptly left. The first lieutenant was not the kind of man to express his thoughts to other people. The report contained detailed information about Yuki's subordinates. There were more than 1,000 other worlders gathered from every part of the world. Less than 10% of them did not awaken a unique skill. Those people were leading a peaceful life in the Empire's capital. More than 10% had awakened a unique skill designed for combat. Over 100 other worlders chose to join the army corps that matched their individual characteristics. The rest of them were offered places of employment according to their specialties, where their work greatly varied. This time, the subject was about the combat-type otherworlders. Yuki Kagarizaka was the man who created the Freedom Association in the Western nations. Until a year ago, he made full use of his power as the Grandmaster to protect the otherworlders as best he could. That was what Yuki self-reported, yet, according to investigations, it was a lie. He buttered up the Raso family and exploited their power. In the West, forbidden summonings of otherworlders were conducted, and from the investigation, there was a massive number of summoners who performed them. Otherwise, it was inconceivable that such a large number of people specialized in combat would appear. Moreover, it was possible to ensure the obedience of these summoned otherworlders through a curse. As such, summoning was the best way to prepare subordinates who would never betray their master. Those otherworlders were scattered across each corps. The alarming implications dawned on First Lieutenant Kandu. That insight was right on the mark. His mental acuity was terrifying, one might say. And as a matter of fact, his fears were justified. The results were evident in this report. Based on Yuki's words, deeds, and actions since moving to the Empire, it was determined that there was a huge probability of him staging a coup d'état. Furthermore, the people that Yuki sent in had all been identified. Thanks to his achievements, the Empire granted Yuki asylum. Despite that, he didn't appear to cherish the Empire's kindness since he was making efforts to expand his influence as he pleased. He dispatched the people that became his followers to each of the army corps, and to top it all off, some of them were recruited by the glorious Imperial Knights. The other corps weren't that much of a concern, but harboring traitors among the Imperial Guardians, charged with protecting His Imperial Majesty, was beyond the pale. To First Lieutenant Kandu, this kind of situation wasn't one to be overlooked. "How dangerous, Yuki Kagarizaka, it seems like I must eliminate you." First Lieutenant Kandu made up his mind, but now wasn't the time. He had to wait a while longer before making his move. Intel revealed that the Archmage Master Gadra was connected to Yuki. This information had been corroborated, but it remained unclear just how deep their relationship went. Needless to say, Master Gadra was an important figure to the Empire. Although it seemed unlikely for him to commit treason, Kandu knew that the reason why Master Gadra and the Empire had a cooperative relationship solely came down to his goals aligning with the principles of the Empire. Taking that at face value, it was conceivable that a conflict of interest might arise down the line. In that case, that old man will also pose a significant threat. If so, Yuki and Gadra. The former had the build of a young boy, yet his conduct indicated a far greater wealth of experience. Like with Kandu, it was dangerous to judge him by appearance alone. The latter was an old man in appearance. In truth, he was a mysterious person who had been walking the earth for over a millennium. Challenging such a man required more than a half-hearted attempt. This was the motivation behind why he gathered information. Evidence had been piling up, but it was still not enough. He couldn't make any open moves just yet. Each and every otherworlder under Yuki's care would be scrutinized with a fine-tooth comb. And then, they would be examined to see if any of them were dominated by the curse. Nevertheless, if Yuki or Gadra showed any unnatural signs, then,
when that time comes, don't expect a public trial.
First Lieutenant Kondu, the man who worked in the shadow of the Empire, had anything but mercy in store for traitors.
Dance for the Empire. Your lives are already in the palm of my hand.
In the darkness of the imperial capital, his eyes shone with a cold light as First Lieutenant Kondu muttered quietly to himself. A one-eyed man sat in a posh chair in an office with a luxurious desk. He was a skinny man in his 40s and wore an eye patch over his left eye. His name was Calgurio, and he was the commander of the Armored Corps, which took pride in being the most powerful force within the Empire. On the desk in front of him lay several magic crystals. These magic crystals, which were a source of magical energy, were of high purity and quality. Thanks to the technique Yuki introduced, magic crystals could be refined into magic stones. By purifying the magic crystal extracted from the core of a monster, one could produce a magic stone, which could store magical energy. There were also natural magic stones dropped by monsters. That said, these could only be extracted from individuals who possessed an enormous magicule content, such as A-ranked monsters and higher. Such natural magic stones were of incomparably high quality and were commonly used as ornaments or magic catalysts, rather than as fuel. Without a regular supply of them available, they had no value as an energy source. Calgurio reached for the magic crystal on his desk and picked it up. The closer he examined it, the more readily apparent its brilliant quality became to him. With a heavy heart, he placed the magic crystal back down, longing for that sensation he felt while holding it. Reaching out, he instead grabbed the accompanying report that was delivered to him alongside the crystal. It was a summary of the Research Institute's findings. With a magic crystal of this purity, 100 Empire-made magic stones could be produced. It was so pure that it could even be converted into energy without further refinement. To collect samples this immaculate, one had to slay monsters of rank B or higher. That was what the report had concluded.
Damn you, Gadra.
He erupted furiously.
Don't you dare think you can hide this cash cow from me.
He had paid off the research staff so that they would let him know when something amiss had happened, which led to this astonishing report. Gadra had brought in these magic crystals fairly recently. It was unknown where he got them, but judging from the number, it could be surmised that he found a colony of monsters. Regardless, they were all first class in quality and further testing showed that they contained roughly equal amounts of energy. It wasn't possible to harvest the same consistent quality from different kinds of monsters. The grade of the crystals would inevitably vary between them. Consequently, it was necessary to refine and process them into magic stones. On the contrary, the magic crystals before him were surprisingly uniform. This was a strong indication towards them stemming from a pack of monsters of the same race. He doubted there was a possibility for them to domesticate whatever monsters produced these crystals, but thought that it would improve the energy situation of the Empire if they engaged in regular raids.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai sponsors: Maria Vasquez Rodriguez, Matt Alphonse Magpantay, Louie Caro, Sama Kazuya, Yuki Iki, Peter Ambak Helsem. Thank you so much for helping out. Shout out to the commenters: Abhishek Pawar, Lumineseka T, Wabalabadabdub, Linglong Pagoda. I'll see you guys in the next video.